Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Charles Lugassy at Radio Shalom, and we have the opportunity today to offer you and present to you somebody who is at the upfront of the new generation of Sephardim in Canada, and he's been doing quite a few things. We have Alan Yehuda Azoulay from Toronto. Good day, Yehuda.
Hi, how are you?
Yehuda Azoulay, let me introduce you a little bit to our listeners because you are familiar to people who are in the field of Sephardic literature and community. But for the mass, let's see who you are first of all. You've just accomplished something which is unusual. You headed one of the first delegation of Sephardim from Canada, from BC to Quebec, to Ottawa, and it was the first in the history of Sephardim in Canada. So can you tell us a little bit about the idea of going to Ottawa, and what was the purpose of that visit?
Sure. So basically, in a nutshell, it was a year and a half ago, I headed the same thing in Congress, in U.S. Congress, where I brought 175 individuals to come to U.S. Congress, and we did the same thing there. It's never been done where an actual Sephardic representation in the United States came to have a collective voice. So the same idea, I said I am Canadian, even though at the time I lived in the States, to have a collective voice in Parliament Hill. So that was the intention, and the goal of the event was not just to take photos with the ministers and the prime minister. That's actually the ultimate goal was twofold. The first goal essentially was basically to lobby for our recognition and for our awareness, and as well as for the security of our Sephardic synagogues and institutions all across Canada, simply because we unintentionally come always secondary in the world, and people tend to forget about us. And I always say to myself, if Chabad could be there every 6 months to a year, Chabad Jews, why can't we? Why can't Sephardic Jews, especially for 50 to 60,000 Jews across Canada, and out of a representation out of 390,000 or so Jews, so that we carry major weight, and we could carry a lot of influence, and we could do a lot with a collective voice rather than just a few Sephardic voices in each city. So that was the first thing. And the second one was to put pressure on the Canadian government from all these individuals, from all these influential individuals who came together about Iran, that Iran should recognize the human rights situation of what's going on. It was just a matter of a week before Purim, the holiday of Purim, and it was very successful about the testimony. So I think the first thing alone was just to break ice with the government and just to have a general awareness, and as well as to recognize that we're here to stay, we love our country, we love our prime minister, but also, hey, we want to do more for our community and as well as for our government of Canada.
My first question to you, Yehuda, what are the demands of the Sephardim of Canada? Are they in need of something? Do they have anything that they don't get usually and that they need to get from the Canadian government? Is there any specific demand?
I don't think there's any specific demand, per se. I don't think there's even any specific demand from the general Jewish community. I think we're all happy here. We have all our issues, whether collectively or individually in their own respective communities. But I do think that the simple fact to have a recognition, to have a voice, and if there is any form of complaint or anything that needs to be taken care of, people could come to this future organization, which we are in the midst of creating, and have a voice, and to go to the government of Canada and say, hey, I'm a Sephardic Jew, I'm a Moroccan Jew, I'm a Persian Jew, whatever it is, and I want to take care of X, Y, and Z. So the first thing, for example, is yes, we did lack security for our synagogues. Threat is on the rise, terrorism is on the rise worldwide, and in Canada especially, of what's going on, especially 2 months ago, what happened in Parliament Hill. So we need to be secure. So I know that the government has grants, and I know that other synagogues do not, as far as I know, do not let other Sephardic synagogues and other communities know except for themselves. So we have to be more involved, more active, and more progressive in day-to-day.
I understand, but this aspect of security, doesn't it fall under the umbrella of the whole Jewish community? Isn't it as a whole that we are perceived by the Canadian government?
100%. But the problem is that not everybody is aware of the programs. Not everybody has a voice in the government, so not everybody even knows what's going on. So some synagogues do know, some synagogues don't know. Simply they don't know because they're not active. So the Chabad synagogues across Canada, not all, but a lot of them, do know about these grants that are being offered from the government of Canada. So at least we could start knowing if there's anything, like this is a perfect example for the future, that somebody could be actively involved in the government that could help the Sephardic communities. I have to say, respectively to whether the UJA or any federations or any Jewish organizations, is that they tend to overlook unintentionally Sephardic Jews, and it is a fact. And I'm willing to argue about that from now till to the end of times, because it is a fact, and it's been always like that. So they may take care of it generally, but for example, in Toronto, there was a Bikur Cholim which takes care of the needies, and they took care of Sephardic Jews, but they didn't know all the Sephardic Jews. We know our own. We know our own issues. We have our own different mentality, our own different world. I'm not saying to create, God forbid, a division. Rather, to be a part of everything. So we had to, in Toronto, create our own Sephardic Bikur Cholim in order to fulfill the void. Same thing here. It's to fulfill a void in case of anything in the future. It's never been done. Okay, maybe we haven't been needing things in the past, but the very fact is that we could have something to depend on, whatever it may be, something for the future. That's all. It's just an extra option. It's an extra beautiful voice to have, and this is a part of Jewish culture and the Jewish world, is to have a colorful collective voice.
So, in other words, Yehuda Azoulay from Toronto, you're not building with your Sephardic Legacy Institute of Toronto, you're not building an organization that's going to play against the rest of the Jewish community. You are building something that will reinforce the Sephardic aspect of the Jewish community as a whole.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry about that. Yeah, the idea is that we have even no competition in the sense. So there is definitely our own ways to go about promoting Sephardic heritage and Sephardic means of anything of the sort. So that's the ultimate purpose.
Let's say after this wonderful day, apparently by all means, every participant said that it was an excellent day, an excellent opportunity. What would be your assessment of the whole thing?
Well, my assessment is very simple. The very fact that everyone is not everyone was very happy, but I saw the amount of interest, the amount of follow-up. For example, there was one day for the event, there was 1 week of follow-ups nonstop, where Vancouver, Ottawa papers to individuals have been constantly, thank God, bombarding me with what's going on, what are these Sephardic Jews doing? So that itself has some interest. So we're going to be doing a follow-up now to continue to try to push for security grants, to push for a Sephardic voice. It's nice to have, God willing, even Sephardic ministers or members of parliament in a part of the Canadian government, and that is the purpose.
And now, as it stands, you have contacts and direct contacts with the Canadian government and the conservative government, as a matter of fact. Do I have the same impression that Sephardim in Toronto are like Sephardim in Montreal? They are pro-conservative, or is that a fair assumption?
Yes, it is actually. Ironically, Prime Minister Stephen Harper, one of the first things he told us, and he was even looking at me at the time because he knew I was a bit more of a historian, and he mentioned that when Jews were voting in Canada throughout Canadian history, their decision-making was never known. In other words, they could have voted conservative, NDP, liberal, whatever. There's always Sephardic Jews. Majority, if not all, always voted conservative. So yes, in Toronto, most Sephardic Jews, I can't say for everyone, but at least a very strong, I believe, 90% vote these days in 2015 for the Conservative Party without a question. And
before letting you go, Yehuda Azoulay from Toronto, can you tell us a little bit more about the Sephardic Legacy Institute? What does it do? What does it comply? Does it has a branch in Montreal, or you intend to create one? Where do we stand on that?
Sure. So basically, Sephardic Legacy Institute for Preserving Sephardic Heritage was meant to be an actual publication house, or more just it was just a research institute for preserving heritage and literature and so on. So it became a springboard towards activism, towards many different things. So there's really no branches. There is a board. There is a president in Brooklyn. He's Syrian. It's open to any Jews. We have Ashkenazim. We have all types of Sephardic. We have people in Boston affiliated from all over. The purpose is to publish a lot of works in English and as well as in many languages. We have it in French, Spanish, Hebrew, soon even in Persian. But that's just the books. But that's a springboard to big events. Well, the event in Congress was huge. The event in Parliament was also great, and so on and so forth. So it's also an activism. Sephardic Judaism in general is progressive, and that's what it has to be. It can't just be by literature. It has to be active, and that's what we're about. So it's not necessarily per city has its own, grounding, but it's open for everybody, for any person who wants to preserve Sephardic Judaism.
By the way, let's hear a little bit of insights on that mission that you had in Washington with the Congress. It was a year ago or so, I believe.
It was a year and a half ago.
A year and a half ago. And what kind of consequences did it have, and what kind of relationship do you have now with the Congress? Did it pay? Did it bear fruits at all?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's very simple. There was definitely no consequences. It was only beneficial. What we did was we had, I would say, a dozen or so senators and members of Congress coming in, the most influential of all colors there. It was bipartisan, and we did accomplish a lot. A lot of things, I have to say, that I can't say that we got done behind the scenes, but there's no purpose of making an event just to make some noise and nothing gets done. It's very easy to do that, to make some glitz and glamour and to make some noise. I like to get things done on the side. Privately, for example, one thing that I could mention that did get done was we preserved and we saved thousands of documents, thousands of books, Sepharim from Jewish works, and as well as Sefer Torahs from Iraq. Where is it today? I can't disclose that, but the very fact that we lobbied, we did it, we took care of it, and it's preserved in the right hands, that was alone worth it. To save and secure just Judaism itself, let alone Sephardic Judaism itself, Jewish works and things, manuscripts, rather than leaving it in the hands of people in Iraq, especially what's going on these days with ISIS and so on. So that alone is rewarding, is a mitzvah, and is a wonderful thing. Aside from making connections and building relations with the Sephardic communities in the States. And actually, after the event, many members of Congress and senators went to their respective cities and had relationships with them, and grew further relations with them. And that was the intention. For example, Deal, New Jersey, with many Syrian Jews, a member of Congress came to them and so on because of that event. So that's the idea. Recently, the fact is that members of Congress, senators, ambassadors, and all types of political influential people all across North America is to build a bridge between Sephardic Jews and the government. That's all. In an only positive way, not to stir things around for the worse. Rather, I believe in a bipartisan relationship, only for the benefit of the average Jew. And simple as that. So there's a lot of benefits to having these big events. And we plan to have more simply on the basis of accomplishing more things.
Alan Yehuda Azoulay from Toronto, wish you good luck, and I thank you very much for these indications and information that you gave us about the renewal and of the Sephardic presence in Canada, and now it appears that through the leadership of young Sephardim, we're going to hear more about Sephardim in Canada. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Yehuda.
It's my honest pleasure. Thank you so much.
Au micro, Charles Lugassy. Have a good day.